Okay, first of all, I'd like to welcome all of you here. It's really a pleasure to have a Hanukkah party and have so many different menorahs being lit all in my house, where I lit one and then Esther lit one and then other people who came here. And I feel very grateful and very honored to have Rabbi Breidowitz. I saw you on your shir of how you compared the Vietnam War with the Hashmonaim, and I said nobody ever did that before. And then I thought about the war in '48, how we were such a small group, nothing, and how we managed to do it. I was 67, and you brought all these things out that nobody ever thought about doing. Everybody was just talking about the miracle of light. And Rabbi Posner asked me about my miracles. My whole life is a miracle, and many of the things that I'm going to tell you, and I don't have a note, so I don't know exactly what I'm going to say, but everything about my life was a miracle. To start with, 1.5 million Jewish children were murdered, and I stayed alive. That's already a miracle, right?
Yes.
Very big miracle.
Sure.
My whole family perished, and I stayed alive. Most children who did survive were in Christian homes, in convents, in nunneries, and hiding on false papers. I was not. I was in the ghetto, a slave labor camp, various concentration camps. I was liberated from Bergen-Belsen. To survive Bergen-Belsen on my own was pretty impossible. And then I went to Sweden. I was brought to the United States. And then I was adopted by an American family. So I speak like an American because I never spoke any other language well, and I certainly didn't know how to read or write. So the fact that I can speak English is also a miracle. Everything that happened to me, if I tell you that I have 2 birthdays, one in December, one in February. I'm not talking about Hebrew, actual birthdays. December 18th, which we just had, and February 15th. One was 35, one was 36. I was born in Poland. No, I was born in Germany. I was a girl. No, I was a boy. Everything about me is completely different, but I can prove everything that I am. So I have some pictures to show you. First of all, in 1989, I had a most wonderful husband, and he encouraged me to do everything. His name was Rabbi Emmanuel Quint. He wrote 17 books on Choshen Mishpat, all of them dedicated to me. My name, Rena, appears in many places, right, Rabbi Breidowitz? And he found them in every place, and he wrote me a note, many of them on my wall. Everybody should have a husband like I had. In '89, I was terrified of going back, but I went back. I found my house. This was the house. I never knew it. But the thing about my house is that there was a mezuzah still on the door. Wow. Is that a miracle? 1989, when we were chosen in '42, a miracle was there.
Where is this?
This is in a city called Pietrkov, which is pretty well known because Rabbi Lau was the rabbi there, and before him was Rabbi Meir Shapiro. And Rabbi Meir Shapiro married my parents. He was the Masada Kedushin, and he left to build Chochmei Lublin, and then he also started Daf Yomi. But I have his signature on my parents' marriage license, which I found. I found my birth certificate, my brother's birth certificates, my parents' marriage license. This was the house that we lived in, and it was a very beautiful house, but it had a terrible staircase. Now, the reason I'm telling you it was a beautiful house, because in 1930, unheard of, certainly a miracle, my mother, my biological mother, because I had 6 mothers, but the woman who gave birth to me in 1930 had a prenuptial agreement. Wow. Did you ever hear of anything like that? Even now. And I have it it's not a ketubah, it's a prenuptial agreement written by a lawyer and certified. Early on, Pietrkov was the first ghetto that was organized. And when the Germans came in, they put a barbed wire fence wall around the Jewish section, and that became the ghetto. And then Jewish people, surrounding neighborhoods couldn't live there, they had to move in. And then people in surrounding towns and villages, little shtetl, they couldn't live there, and they had to move in. It got very crowded. There wasn't enough food. People were starving. There wasn't enough medicine. There was a big typhus epidemic. The weather was very cold. You know see what's happening in Ukraine now. There wasn't enough heat, and it was very crowded. But somehow or other we survived. They took my father and my uncle to a slave labor concentration camp. It was a man's camp where they worked with glass. One night, in the middle of the night, there was banging down on the door, and Nazis came and yelled, "Raus, raus, schnell! You've got 10 minutes to pack up whatever you need and run down these terrible stairs." What would you take if you had 10 minutes, if never to come back, if there was a flood, there was a fire, there was an earthquake? What would you take?
Pictures.
Okay, I'll tell you because we don't have much time. Okay. People say pictures, but pictures, if you notice, I have a lot of them around on my whole walls, every place, and I also have one of this digital that goes around and around. But in order to have pictures, you have to have someplace to put them, even a wall. And if you're not living any place, those wouldn't. But maybe you should take food. Maybe you should take warm clothing. Maybe you should take money. Maybe you should take jewelry that you could, things that are very important that could keep you alive. We were taken out of the ghetto, of our house, and brought us to this square. All the houses in Poland are built around these big squares. And from there we were beaten and chased until we got to Rabbi Lau's synagogue. You can still see the Magen David on the bottom, and it's a beautiful building. There are no Jews, not one left in Pietrków. I've been back several times. So they made it into a library. And you can see these two women who I hired, because I don't speak Polish, to help me find the different things, including the synagogue. In back of the synagogue, which is now a library, there's a door. Very, very important. Remember that door. Inside the synagogue, if you ask the librarian to pull open the curtains, what do you see? The Ten Commandments, right? And in them, there are holes. What are those holes? Those are bullet holes. So they were shooting. They came in, they opened up the Aron Kodesh, they took out the Sifrei Torah, they threw them on the floor, they took out Chumashim and Sidurim, Machzorim, they took out Bibles, prayer, but whatever you can imagine. People were being shot all the time. By this time, I was 6 years old. What does a 6-year-old do when there's such fear? They rounded up 2,000 people. The shul couldn't hold that many people. As many people as they got in, they shoved them in. And the others were taken into the forest where they had to dig ditches and they became their graves. I think as a 6-year-old child, I have no proof. I have a lot of documents I will show you, no proof. I think that I must have been holding on to my mother and maybe crying. What do you think my mother was doing? I'm not letting you answer because I have very little time to talk, so I'm talking quickly. But if you'll stop me, I'll answer things. I don't know how it happened. Behind that door there was a man. I'm not sure who he was. He may have been an uncle or somebody. My name was Fredja, or Fredel in Yiddish, and he beckoned to me and he said, "Run." I must have been very stupid, very naive. Where did I get the bravery? Where did I get the chutzpah? How does a little girl leave her mother? How does she let go of her mother and run away from her? Maybe my mother pushed me, maybe God pushed me. I don't know how it happened. I ran out. That was the last time I saw my mother and my brothers and the rest of all those people. They were put on trains and taken to Treblinka, where now there are 17,000 stones to remember 850,000 people who were murdered in Treblinka, including half of the Jews of Pietrków. This is a stone with the name of Pietrków. There's nobody buried on there, they're just symbols, and people come and put on a yisker, an what do you call it? A yahrzeit candle. I never saw anybody again. They were all put into gas chambers. And I can't help thinking on this beautiful party where we're having music and we're having sufganiyot and everybody's being very, very happy and we're thinking of all the different miracles. I am sure that my mother and my father are looking down to see I'm living in Yerushalayim. Baruch Hashem, I had a wonderful husband. He gave me 4 children. We had 22 grandchildren. And as of now, Kainahara, we're still counting, we have 43 great-grandchildren. So if you think about how, from one person, how many we could have had. This man who told me to run, what was he supposed to do with me? Girls were useless. Boys under the age of 10 they didn't have much either, but boys over the age of 10 could work. This man took me to my father, who was working in a glass factory. My father hugged me and kissed me, but what was he supposed to do with me? So after a while he said, from now on, you're not a little girl, your name isn't Fredja, you're not my Fredel anymore, you're Froyam. Say it. Your name is Froyam, you're 10 years old, you're a boy, your name is Froyam. Say it over and over and over so you'll remember you're a boy and your name is Froyam. And I did. When your life depends on things, I became a boy of 10. How I got away with it? You don't think that's a miracle? Absolute no way. Anyway, I worked very hard. There were big German Shepherd dogs. There were beatings. People were... I'm not going to describe it, but you know the situation. One day the Allies, meaning the Americans, the British, and the Russians, I'm not giving you a chance to tell me who they were coming. So the Germans decided to send people out of Germany to hide everything that they had done. And they brought us to these cattle cars, which are meant for cattle. 80 to 100 people were put onto these cars. When they were filled, the doors were locked. There was nothing to eat, nothing to drink, and no toilet. And even if you don't drink, you have to go to the bathroom. And people fainted, people went crazy. I don't think that my trip was so long because we came from Poland to Germany. But there are people who came from Greece or from Tunis and other places, and it was very long. Anyway, when we finally crossed the border to Germany, the doors were flung open and we jumped down onto the snow. It seems to me it was always snowing, but I know that that's not true because I've been there in the spring and summer. But I just remember the snow. We used the snow to eat it, and we used the snow to drink it, and we used it to look around who was still there. There were two other factories. One was tanning of leather and one was woodworking, and they had men and women. And my father's and my uncle and I were in the men's factory. While we were getting used to this new site, Germans came on motorcycles, and with bullhorns they made an announcement, you're being taken to camps. Men on one side, women on the other. Now my father had a problem. I'm looking very carefully. I don't want to take any of your time. Just, remind me because I'm trying to speak quickly, but my father realized that if I go in with him, the first thing you do when you go into a camp is you have to get undressed. And if I would get undressed, I'm not a boy anymore. I'm still a girl. He met a school teacher. He asked her if she would keep an eye on me. He gave me a picture. Who said pictures? My mother, my father, my two brothers, and me. And he says, look at the picture. The war's going to be over. He promised to meet me in Petrograd. Look at the picture. And I held the picture. My father was taken... I don't know this except that I told you I've read it. I have a train schedule with Rabbi Lau and his brother Naftali Lavi and my father, whose name was Lichtenstein, because it's L. And the Germans were very good about keeping records. So I have this one page where he was on the train to Buchenwald, and I went with my new mother to Bergen-Belsen. I don't remember her name, but I know we walked on a mountain in the snow. And down below, I don't tell this to many people because I don't know if they'll understand, but down below there were two men lying in the snow with their pants down. Do you have any idea why two men would be lying in the snow with their pants down? If a Jewish woman ran away and pretended to be a Christian, maybe she could get away with it. If a Jewish man ran away and they would have any kinds of doubts about him, if you pulled down his pants, and he had a Brit Milah. That was things. I didn't understand what that was, but the women were talking about it, and years later I had to put a lot of things that I didn't understand through to my mind. When we finally got to Bergen-Belsen, just the way my father predicted, we had to get undressed, and I was holding on to my picture. My picture is very important. You said that, right? One of the soldiers thought maybe it was a diamond or money or something valuable. Pried open my hand, was very disappointed. Nothing worthwhile keeping, tore it up and threw it away. I have no idea what my mother, my father, my brothers, were they tall, were they short, what color eyes were they? I know nothing about them, except that I know that my mother had beautiful furniture and jewelry and bedding, because I have a prenuptial agreement. But I don't know what she looked like. Can you imagine? I don't know what she smelled like, what she looked like, but I know she had bedding. I mean, anyway, when we came out of the showers, this woman, my new mother, stole a black coat. And her body heat and the coat kept us warm, and I think that was a miracle. She kept me alive. I had a mother, she kept me alive. Every day, hundreds of people died. And every 5 or 6 women had gotten, you get a blanket, and you get a blanket. They would take their blanket, put a dead body in it someplace, and then throw the body someplace out on the field. And there were 10,000 bodies like this all around. One day, I was very sick with typhus and diphtheria. I'll show you how I can prove. I didn't know how to read, I didn't know how to write, I didn't know anything. How do I know I had typhus and diphtheria? I'll show you how. I found myself lying outside. Maybe it was better than being in the stinking barracks where there was lice and fleas and rats and feces and everything around there. I don't know if somebody helped me or if I was outside. And something happened that never happened before. Soldiers wearing different uniforms, speaking a foreign language came, and with megaphones they made a speech saying, "We are the British Army. We have come to free you. You're free. You're free. You can go or you can do whatever you want." What do I want to do? I don't have a mother. I don't have a father. I don't know where I belong. And I also, when you have typhus, everything is spinning. The British had a very hard time. The first thing they had to do was bury 10,000 bodies. They tried to feed people, and people who ate the wrong food died because they couldn't eat so well. Then they burned down all the houses, all the barracks, because they were so filled with lice and fleas and rats, and you can imagine. And then they took me on a stretcher, and because I was one of the lucky ones, and a miracle, I'm using the word miracle a lot, I was invited to come to Sweden. 6,000 people were invited to come to Sweden to recuperate, and I was one of them. And they took me by stretcher to Lübeck, and from there to Malmo, and I was sent into a displaced persons camp where I met a new mother. But I was very sick, and so they brought me to a hostel home, and they treated me very well, and I told you I had typhus and diphtheria. This is my temperature chart, 1945. My temperature chart, and I had fleck typhus and diphtheria. That's proof. And Barbara Sofer, who works in Hadassah and who helped me write a book, which I have someplace over here, here. It's called A Daughter of Many Mothers. She helped me find this this thing. And while I was in the hospital, a beautiful Christian couple came to visit me. They gave me a doll. They brought me candy canes. They brought me all kinds of things, and they wanted to adopt me. And I wanted very much to go with them. But the people around me said that I was Jewish. I didn't know what it meant to be Jewish. I don't think I remember my mother having a Chanuka party, or having sufganiyot, or having a menorah, or Shabbos candles, or Pesach. But they said that I was Jewish, and all the Jewish children were going to be taken to Palestine, and there I would meet my mother and father and brothers. I didn't know they were no longer alive. I didn't want to go with this Christian couple, I wanted to go to Palestine. So after I got better, this is a picture of me after I got better, that's me over there. And after I got better, I was taken to a different DP camp, displaced persons camp, waiting to go to Palestine with the orphans. And I met another woman, another mother. Her name was Anna. I have her picture on my book. The last two mothers, I have their picture. It's a quilt of many mothers not attached to each other, but each one part of me. And Anna had a son and a daughter, a son, Sigmund, and a daughter, Fanny. Her brother had gone to the United States before the war, and he sent her tickets and affidavits, and somebody had to say that they would take care, you wouldn't be a burden on the United States government. Sponsor. Somebody had to sponsor you, thank you. And they got all these 3 things. They were waiting to go to the United States. I was waiting to go to Palestine. Why did I say Palestine? Why did I say Palestine? 1945. So just think of the miracle. In 1948, we had this beautiful state. In 1945, had Israel been born in 38 instead of 48, had the countries of the world opened their doors, nobody wanted us. Had we had friends, nobody wanted us. Thank God we almost have a government. We have an army. We have our own state. We have our own food. I mean, how lucky and how miraculous all of this was. Anyway, while I was waiting to go to Palestine, and they were waiting to the United States, this little girl, whose name was Fanny, who was born in Germany in February, died. Her mother had all the papers. She didn't have a daughter, and I had the mazel. And she asked me if I wanted to be her daughter and go with her to the United States. And everybody said how lucky I was because I'll go to the United States, and if I go to Palestine, America is the best place to go. So I came to the United States, and I had a new mother and a new brother and a new name. And now I was born in Germany, and everything was fine, except that shortly after we got to a place called Lindenhurst, Long Island, if anybody knows where that is.
We lived there.
You lived in Lindenhurst? Oh, wow. There was a Rabbi Goldberg there?
No, my husband was a rabbi.
Oh, okay. Louis Goldberg was there. And anyway, we lived with the Goldbergs, and they took care of us. And one day, we went up, in the summertime, we went up to Catskill Mountains, to the Kachelain. Remember the Kachelain? Everybody had a room, and there was a kitchen on one side, and the bathrooms on the other side. And I went to day camp, and I learned to go swimming, and I learned to pick blueberries, and learned to play Monopoly, and learned to play bicycle. I became an American kid. Every day I learned new English words, and I thought it was wonderful that a new English word was born every time. Mm-hmm. But one day, Anna's family, the Goldbergs, came back, and Anna had been taken away. But all the women were good to me, so I wasn't so worried about it. But they came back, and everybody looked very glum and very upset. And they took me to Farmingdale. You know what's in Farmingdale? Mm-hmm. There's a big cemetery there. Mm-hmm. Anna had died. Mm-hmm. And they were burying her, and there was one open hole, one grave. Everybody was crying. It didn't make any sense. In Bergen-Belsen, hundreds of people died every day. You just threw them out. And nobody cried. And here one person died, and they were crying. Except for me. Maybe they thought I didn't love Anna. I did. I just didn't. Either I didn't know how to cry, or I didn't know you're supposed to cry. I just didn't know. Anyway, we went home to sit Shiva. And while we were sitting Shiva, this family had a problem. I'm always somebody's problem. What do you do with me? I was going to have a mother, and the mother wasn't there. So they called up this man and woman, Leah and Jacob Globe, who were 46 years old and never were able to have a child. They lived in Brooklyn, New York, and they asked them if they'd like to meet a little girl who could use a home. And I went there for Shabbat, and I came in there, and there was chicken soup on the stove, and there was smell of Shabbos, and they gave me cookies and milk before. They had a little dog. You know how I feel about dogs. Dogs in the camps were terrible. But I wasn't going to show them that I was scared of the dog, because maybe they liked the dog better than me. If they didn't like me, what would happen? Would they send me back? Well, they did like me. And I'm looking for a picture that I can't find it. Okay, I'll tell you about it anyway. Anyway, when it was time to go back home, back to Lyndhurst, guess what they asked me? Would you like to stay with us and be our daughter? And you know my answer. I always wanted somebody. They became wonderful, wonderful parents. My mother painted many of these pictures, and that one is my wedding. You can see me there. And that man in the white kittel with the top hat is my late husband, and the chazan there. And and she also painted this little girl, which happens to be my granddaughter, but everybody thinks it looks like me. I don't have any pictures of me, so I'd like to think, you know, I look like that. And then I met this wonderful man, Emmanuel Quint, and he really was wonderful. In 1981, there was a gathering of Holocaust survivors, and my family said, let's go to Israel. Maybe somebody else survived, just like you did. We came here, we went to Binyanei, put up, nobody ever heard of us. So we wrote to a place, Arlson, and they gave me proof of everything. They gave me my name was Fredjo, my parents' name, Isaac and Sarah Lichtenstein. I was in the ghetto, I was in the various camps, all the things that I told you, they told me, and then case closed, child adopted in America. So I knew that what I remembered was true, because I very often doubted. Did I hear myself saying that I know it? And in '84 we made Aliyah, and I started volunteering in Yad Vashem, and I became a docent over there. '89 we went back to Poland, and I found, as I said, my birth certificate and my parents' marriage license and my home and the mezuzah on the door. And when I came back, this was when I found my birth certificate. People in Yad Vashem are very used to different things, but when I came on the bus with my birth certificate, everybody was so happy, because what? Everybody has a birth, everybody's born. What's the big deal? But you know, it was such a moving thing for me too. I really was born. I really am. So now I was born in December. I just had a birthday, but I celebrate the one in February, because I got that in '45. If I would come in with a new birthday of 2022 to Ben Gurion or to Kennedy, they would keep me there for days. You know, how do you change your birthday, right? So it's easier to do that. And I don't have to show you any more of these pictures, but I've really had a lot of interesting people that I've met. Here is Pelosi and the different people from the Congress. This is my birth certificate. These are my children, which is Dor Hemshech, the future generations with Yad Vashem. And about 3 months ago, I guess it really was a exciting and very, it was a special thing. I don't know the words to use there, but I met with President Biden. And that's me, with the most influential person in the world. And we had a 15-minute talk, Gita and myself. You saw it on television? Yeah, and it's in all the papers. And look who was there. Look, it started with Blinken and Rabbi Lau and Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid and Joe Biden and Herzog and Donnie Dayan and 2 Marines and the Chazan singing that. So, and here is President Biden with me, and here are all the different people like that. And this, I don't know if the rabbi and anybody else will object, but I did not object. He gave me a kiss. Now, I don't know what the question is, and you might rule it differently, but my husband, who never wanted to shake hands, very often when he worked in the Navy Yard in Brooklyn, and many of the black women who used to, I don't know what the word you're supposed to use now, but they used to come and say, oh, Mr. Quint, and they wanted to shake hands or hug him. And he said, you know what, it's really not polite to embarrass somebody and take it away. So if he came over and kissed me, I wasn't going to say, don't do that. So I was very happy, and I'm glad to show it to you. If anybody has, I think it's amazing. I think the whole thing is a miracle that I am here. And I'm very happy that you all came. And if you have any questions, Rabbi Poston will give me 5 minutes.
Shir shir chadya